Okay, so um, you know that feeling, right? That like primal fear that makes you jump at like shadows
Hmm.
or like avoid sidewalk cracks like they're, lava or something.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
all been there.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But then it's like what happens when that fear, it kind of becomes this like bigger thing, something that really starts to have like a real impact on your life.
Absolutely. It can be so
And
debilitating.
that's where phobias come in.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into these incredible stories about people who tackled their phobias head on with hypnotherapy.
It's amazing, these intense, often irrational fears, they can have such a powerful grip on us, but then to see how people break free from that, it's pretty
Mhm.
remarkable.
It is, and we've got this whole stack of testimonials about this hypnotherapist, Stuart Heale, in the UK, who seems to be like really making a difference.
That's great. Testimonials can be so insightful, to get that personal perspective on therapy.
Totally. And it's
Mm.
not just like your average reviews either.
Yeah.
People really go into detail about like what they were struggling with and how Stuart's approach helped them have these big breakthroughs.
It's fascinating. You get to see what really resonates with people, what clicks for them, and I think that's incredibly
Oh,
valuable.
sure. For sure. And one thing that really stood out to me was how many people said that Stuart's hypnotherapy wasn't what they were expecting at all.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't like that whole "you are getting sleepy" kind of thing.
Right.
People talked about being fully aware and in control like the whole time.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That's a really key distinction with modern hypnotherapy. It's not about putting you under a spell or anything like that.
Mm.
It's more about tapping into the power of your own subconscious mind, but you're an active participant.
This is less about being controlled and more about kind of taking control of yourself.
Exactly. Accessing that deeper part of yourself, at that subconscious level where a lot of these fear responses are kind of rooted and working with it to create positive change.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of positive change, there's this one story, Marie's story, that really got to me. She was talking about how she had this intense fear of leaves.
Leaves.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Which, I mean, I know it sounds kind of strange,
Yeah.
but it just shows how phobias can pop up in the most unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And there's often like a deeper anxiety or past experience that's driving it.
Right. And for Marie, it was actually preventing her from like fully enjoying outings. She was constantly worried about running into a big leaf or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a good reminder that even those fears that seem a little unusual to others, they can have a very real impact on a person's life.
Totally. And it sounds like Stewart's approach really helped her reframe her thoughts and feelings about leaves
Mm,
and allowed her to, engage with the world a little more freely.
that's fantastic. It's not always about erasing the fear completely, but giving people the tools to kind of navigate it effectively.
It's like taking the power back.
Ex-
And it seems like that's a really common theme in a lot of these testimonials, this idea of like gaining control over your fears rather than letting them control you.
Yeah, totally. And it's about empowering people, right? To like engage with their fears in a new way. And, that sense of empowerment, that seems to be a big part of what makes Stewart's approach so effective.
It is interesting you say that because a lot of these testimonials, they specifically mention these like personalized techniques Stewart uses.
Hmm.
It's like he really takes the time to understand each person's like unique fears
Yeah.
and then kind of tailors his approach accordingly.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial. I mean, what works for one person might not work for another, right? It's almost like finding the right key for a lock.
That is a great analogy. And it makes me think of Lisa's story. She's the one who mentioned like being able to contact her subconscious during her sessions with Stewart. It almost sounds a little,
A little out there. But in the context of hypnotherapy, it makes sense because it's about accessing that deeper level of awareness within yourself, right?
okay.
That subconscious mind where all of our automatic thoughts and behaviors are coming from. And often that means kind of uncovering, hidden beliefs, maybe past experiences that might be contributing to that fear. It's like
Yeah.
shining a light on like those dark corners of our minds and being like, oh, okay, that's where that belief came from.
Right, like those aha moments you have in therapy
Yeah.
where
Oh.
everything just kind of clicks.
Exactly. And those aha moments can be incredibly powerful for creating lasting change.
Right. Speaking of powerful change, we have got to talk about the range of phobias this guy seems to work with.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking everything from like, the common ones like fear of spiders
Right.
to the more unusual, like fear of leaves, fear of dying.
It really speaks to the universality of fear, you know. We all have those things, right, that trigger a primal response, but,
Yeah.
you know, finding those healthy, constructive ways to navigate them, that's essential for living a fulfilling life, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not always easy, right? I mean, imagine living with a fear that's so intense that it prevents you from like doing the things you love or even just being present with your loved ones.
Totally. It can be incredibly isolating and limiting. And, you know, that's why it's so inspiring to see these stories. Like Sadie, who had such a severe spider phobia, she went from being terrified to, like, calmly catching a spider in her home.
Oh, wow.
I
It's
know.
a huge shift.
That is a huge shift. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? Like, what is that secret sauce? Is there something about Stuart's approach that makes it so effective for these really, like, deep-seated fears?
Right. That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't know that there's just one answer.
Yeah. But I think a big part of it is the way that hypnotherapy helps us rewrite those ingrained thought patterns and emotional responses.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your fear response.
Exactly.
Right.
And, you know, most of all, just being an active participant in your own healing journey, it's not passive.
Yeah, it's that human connection, right? It's that feeling of being like supported and empowered
Yeah.
to face those fears.
Yes, exactly. It's not just about the technique itself, but that therapeutic relationship
Right.
and the individual's willingness to really engage in the process.
For sure. And that really comes through in these testimonials, this idea that it's like a partnership, right?
Yep.
Between Stuart and his clients. It's not just this like one-sided thing where, they're just receiving therapy passively. It's like they are active collaborators in their own transformation.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes these stories so inspiring because they remind us that we are not prisoners of our fears. There are tools out there, techniques, compassionate guides who are ready to help us, navigate those challenges and really unlock our full potential.
That's true. And it's like these stories, they give you this little glimmer of hope, the sense that even those really deep, like ingrained fears, we can overcome them.
Totally, yeah. They challenge us to kind of like reconsider what we think is possible, even for ourselves. I mean, if someone can go from being like totally terrified of leaves to like, happily taking a walk in the park with their grandkids, it makes you wonder, what else can we do? What seems impossible that, maybe isn't.
That is such a good point. And I think it reminds us, too, that there are so many different approaches to like healing and growth out there. Hypnotherapy might not be for everybody.
Right.
But I think the takeaway here is that there are resources available, things that maybe we haven't even considered that could make a huge difference.
Totally. It's about finding what works for you. And sometimes that means like stepping outside that comfort zone, trying new things, and trusting that maybe, just maybe, there's a totally different way of experiencing the world just waiting for us.
And speaking of different ways of experiencing the world, there's one more story I wanted to touch on. It's James's story. He went to see Stuart for like anxiety.
Yeah.
And it seemed like from his testimonial, it really did like turn his whole life around.
Wow.
He even said, I owe this man a lot, which,
That's pretty huge.
That is a huge statement, yeah. And it speaks to like that ripple effect,
Yeah.
when we're stuck in that fear and anxiety cycle, it's like we're just living in this like limited version of ourselves.
Totally.
But then when we address those fears, when we start to experience relief, empowerment, it can impact literally everything. Our relationships, our work, just our overall well-being.
It's like the world just kind of opens up a little bit and all these possibilities come to the surface.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what these testimonials are really pointing to, right? It's that potential for change. Like we can grow, we can reclaim our lives from those fears.
It's truly inspiring.
And it highlights how important it is to share our stories, the good and the bad. You never know who might be out there listening, who might be like really needing to hear this.
Right.
Maybe they're on the verge of seeking help themselves.
Yeah.
And hearing those real life stories, those stories of hope and healing, it could be exactly what they need to take that first step.
Absolutely. So if you're out there and you're struggling with a fear or a phobia, whether it's big or small, just know, like, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
And while, we did a deep dive on Stuart Heale today and his work over in the UK, and you can find him at www.healehypnotherapy.com,
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger message is this. There are so many different paths to healing and growth out there.
There really are.
And sometimes, that courage to seek help,
Mm-hmm.
that's the most transformative step of all.
So well said. And as we kind of wrap up here, the the thought that keeps coming back to me is, what if that key to overcoming our greatest fear is closer than we think? What if that power to, transform our lives is already within us, just waiting to be unlocked?
That's something to think about.
It is.